Graduates, congratulations. It really is an honor and a privilege to be here with all of you today at your commencement. You are clearly passionate, talented, and motivated. I'm sure that there are many special people that were with you along your way, your friends, colleagues, and families. Be kind and patient. These relationships are complex, and it will take a lot of effort to maintain them over a lifetime. Remember that things happen quickly, and it's worth telling people what they mean to you when you have a chance. Today is a very good day for that. As an undergraduate student at Rensselaer, I took classes in engineering, science, mathematics, art, history, and literature. I loved all of it. I fell in love with it all. I think that's why I'm so fond of the Renaissance. There are a lot of heroes from that time, and I love the stories of Michelangelo. At about your age, the young, 23-year-old, relatively unknown sculptor takes a project in Rome. He's given a large, pristine block of Carrara marble, 2 hammers, and 3 chisels. 2 years later, Michelangelo has sculpted the Pietà, a stunningly beautiful statue of young Mary holding her son just after being removed from the cross. It's elegant, moving, and well-proportioned. It's so well done that Michelangelo's older contemporaries began to attribute it to another sculptor. To eliminate any question, the young Michelangelo prominently chisels his name across the delicate diagonal sash that runs between Mary's breast. It was the right thing to do. He fought back. The Pietà launched Michelangelo's career, but he regretted the vanity of the action, and he never signed another work. 3 years later, in Florence, a massive block of marble. Many sculptors deemed it too flawed to sculpt, and it was known simply as the Giant. It was again taken by Michelangelo, and over the next 2 years, he worked tirelessly in secrecy, alone in an outdoor courtyard, frequently soaked in rain, with models in stone buried in water. He rarely ate, slept in his clothes, boots on. When finished, the colossal statue David was again described by his contemporaries as a miracle and the finest sculpture ever made. Roughly a decade later, he accepts the challenge of painting the Sistine Chapel, painting above his head on elaborate scaffolds 60 feet in the air, with paint dripping in his face and eyes, standing and contorting, reaching for details. He described the effort as simply torture. He worked on it for 4 straight years. When done, the entire ceiling, covered in frescoes, is one of Michelangelo's most iconic works. The unrelenting effort and focus of Michelangelo is legend. The strength and speed with which he hammered and chiseled left his hands damaged, arthritic, and racked in pain. Yet he was known to be sculpting, chiseling away into his last days. There is beauty in effort. Effort is beautiful. Effort is how, like Michelangelo, you will turn marble into miracles. I really like what Ian just said. Push on the boundaries of what is possible. Effort. That pushing on boundaries is the one thing that you can actually control. When I was your age, I was drawn to engineering. I took a job and I worked for 9 straight months at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I was a small part of a small but brilliant team of engineers that were hammering away nights and weekends, designing and building what would eventually become the first Mars rover. We were on our 4th prototype, our 4th iteration. We called it Rocky IV. Engineers. The main problem I saw with Rocky were its surfaces. We had almost no idea how to make this thing work in the Martian atmosphere. This complex moving mechanical assembly needed to work. It needed to move. I left the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, returned to Rensselaer, and entered graduate school working on engineering surfaces. At the time, I thought it was the hardest problem in engineering. I spent the next 20 years of my life in laboratories, sparing no effort, building instrumentation, training students, and collaborating with colleagues across the world, all to control surfaces, to allow interfaces to support loads, slide, move, conduct heat or electricity. I had an almost singular focus on this problem. It was my giant block of marble that I hammered on constantly. I remember the morning that all of that changed for me. I remember the entire day clearly. I woke up, there was a realization that I had that something wasn't quite right. I biked into my general physician's office, I set up an ultrasound, and later that day, I knew. It took a week for the definitive diagnosis of stage 4 metastatic cancer to come. I had a bunch of scans, exams, tests, and the first of 5 surgeries. While I was asleep in recovery, the doctor told my wife, this aggressive cancer was on the move. It was spreading. I had to face the new reality that I was a cancer patient. That evening, I told my sons, William and Charles, the diagnosis. They were 12 and 7 at the time. It was the worst conversation, the worst thing I've ever had to tell anyone in my life. I felt sick, truly sick. The next day, I got in early to my laboratory. I turned on the lights and cried. I just stood there staring alone at a career's worth of work and cried. I was thinking about my students and how was I going to tell them that I probably wouldn't be here for their graduation. That was the second hardest conversation of my life. Please understand, you are a family. The friends, the colleagues, the people you are here with today, it means something. Within 2 weeks, I was at the best cancer center in the country, where I met my new oncologist, who said, well, the 5-year survival is in the toilet. What do you want to do? I couldn't believe this was the beginning of my cancer story. What do I want to do? Work. Fight back. I wanted to work on cancer. I drove back to a friend's house that evening, and I went to work. I had a project to finish, a report to write, and a lifetime of lessons to teach 2 young boys. A diagnosis like this changes your perspective quickly. What I realized is that we are not living for ourselves. We're living for others, for our families and what we leave behind. I remember my first prayer as a cancer patient. God, let me stay here as long as the boys need me. Simple. Everything takes on a new urgency. I can't imagine what it's been like for them living with that urgency. My research focus also changed. Where does cancer need an engineer? Where are the interfaces, the surfaces, the gaps in knowledge? There has to be a way that I can help. That night, when everyone was asleep, I downloaded my first scientific paper on cancer. I couldn't read it. The terminology was like Dr. Seuss. I'm not kidding. See Mick, Smad, Junk went frizzled. Those are gene names. Molecular biologist. I never felt dumber in my life. I kept digging, trying to read this stuff, wading through these papers, making notes, slowly chiseling things away. I picked a treatment path that kept as many options open as possible, sparing no effort, 5 surgeries and 2 rounds of intense radiation. I realized that immunotherapy was my only real chance. 6 months later, I was patient 1 on a combination checkpoint inhibitor trial. I have no doubt that I am here with you today because of that trial. In reading the cancer papers, it became clear to me that my own training and experiences brought a different perspective to the cancer problem. Engineers work with extremely complex systems, but we like to break them down, tear them apart, test individual components and subassemblies, and manage complexity systematically, piecewise. Whatever challenges you are faced with, don't forget your training. It's broad. It's important. You may just have the perspective that we need. Never, ever, ever quit. There is beauty in effort. Effort is powerful. And don't expect any easy swing of the hammer. For me, it was a discovery by a friend, a colleague, and a UF engineering professor, Tommy Angelini, that opened the door. After 2 years of searching, I could just start to see a way to help. Bioprinting. We now manufacture tumors by the thousands in a lab here at UF. All human biology, a tool for everyone to build and tear apart cancer, figure out how it works, and eventually find its weaknesses and stop it. We built that lab, a cancer engineering lab. We're fighting back. Today, 5 years after my diagnosis, I am still here. I'm still fighting back. I'm still swinging the hammer. I once again have a laboratory full of great instrumentation, all hand-built by people like you, a group of brilliant scientists and engineers, all dedicated to cancer research. I'm a part of the greatest team of Gators, collaborating in medicine, engineering, and sciences, all working together, all focused on the same problem. Cancer survivors make promises, and we keep them. I like that. I wish I did more of that before cancer, the promises. I live 6 months at a time. I've come to peace with this existence. I plan optimistically, but I live urgently, truly urgently. Working on a cure for cancer is a tall and sometimes agonizing problem. It reminds me of Michelangelo's ceiling. I try to bring persistent and continuous effort and urgency and optimism to the challenge. And I look to collaborate with colleagues, people, and students that can do the same. Unrelenting effort and focus. Breakthroughs almost always have elements of chance, opportunity, and ability. But remember that there is almost always an element of prodigious effort. Challenges will not define you. It's how you handle them. Whatever you do, whatever you are faced with, never, ever, ever quit. regardless of the challenge, you will absolutely find your way through it. You're young, but so was Michelangelo when he started the Pieta. And remember, you're Gators. Enjoy your day.